Long before the trophies, before the race suits and pit lanes, there was just a boy in a cramped city apartment, miles away from any real circuit. His tracks were cracked sidewalks and imaginary lines on the living room carpet. Motorsport reached him only through the flicker of a second-hand television and a stack of worn auto magazines his father found at a flea market. No one in his family worked with cars. His father had once followed Formula One in his youth. His mother, cautious and practical, saw racing as dangerous and wasteful. Yet on race days, the TV would glow in the corner, the scream of engines filling their modest home. And there, on the couch's edge, sat a boy who barely blinked. The first time he drove wasn't in some storied karting academy. It was at a rental track an hour's bus ride away. He gripped the wheel like it might escape, stomped the throttle too hard, spun once, twice. For a moment, fear had him. But by the third lap, fear gave way to something else, the electric rush of belonging. While classmates swapped football cards and argued about superheroes, he sketched racetrack layouts in the margins of his school books. His dreams didn't match theirs, and that difference became his fuel. Even then, an observer could see it. He wasn't just passing time. He was already chasing something invisible to everyone else, a finish line only he could see. The rain was coming down in thin, sharp lines, turning the kart track into a ribbon of black glass. From the stands, parents huddled under umbrellas, their shouts barely cutting through the growl of two-stroke engines. In the middle of it all, a boy in a second-hand race suit wrestled his cart through the final corner, visor flecked with water, chasing the leader with a desperation that seemed too heavy for his age. He crossed the line in second place, punching the air, not because it was a trophy, but because it felt like proof that he belonged here. That race would be talked about for weeks in the paddock, a cramped ecosystem of folding chairs, plastic fuel cans, and rivalries far older than the drivers themselves. The air smelled of gasoline and wet asphalt. Conversations were half encouragement, half quiet calculation. Even among children, competition had teeth. But behind the boy's victory was a cost invisible to most. His father had already turned down a higher-paying job, one that would have stolen him away on weekends. His mother had sold a keepsake ring to cover the cost of a rebuilt engine. Dinner portions at home had grown smaller, vacations erased from the calendar. Every extra tenth of a second on track had been bought with something else off it. And then came the lesson that would linger longer than any podium. Speed alone didn't always win. One weekend he was quicker by every measurable metric, but the victory went to another, the son of a key sponsor. From the outside, it looked like a simple race result. Inside the family's small rented van, it felt like a warning. This sport could break you without ever touching you. Still, the boy returned to the track the next morning, boots muddy, eyes fixed on the grid. He was learning more than racing lines now. He was learning the rules no one wrote down, the ones that would follow him all the way to the next chapter. The moment came in the final lap, at a corner where overtakes were supposed to be impossible. Two cars thundered side by side, tires skimming the painted edge. The rookie, barely out of karts, braked a heartbeat later than physics recommended, slid through, and crossed the line ahead. From the outside, it looked like raw instinct. Inside the cockpit, it was calculation wrapped in desperation. Only weeks earlier, that same rookie had been introduced to the brutal differences between karting and Formula cars. The acceleration was savage, the G-forces clamped down on his neck like a vice, and the steering wheel was no longer just a tool. It was a coded interface, every button and rotary switch demanding instant, flawless input. Braking meant hitting pedal pressure strong enough to bruise a ribcage, and missing by half a second could erase an entire race. Life off track didn't soften the blow. Schoolwork collided with race calendars, assignments were submitted from hotel lobbies, and group chats with old friends went silent. Not from anger, just from distance. He was living on a different clock now. Then there was the hunt for sponsorship, a game as ruthless as anything on track. Cold calls to strangers, dozens of unanswered emails, the nerve-wracking handshake with a potential backer in a sterile boardroom. He'd walk in with a media kit built on a borrowed laptop and a smile that hid the fact he needed the deal to survive another season. Every new logo on his race suit was more than a payday. It was a lifeline. In the paddock, tension simmered. Rivalries brewed fast, sometimes ending in fierce arguments after wheel-to-wheel clashes, other times in grudging respect after a daring pass. The air smelled of fuel and ambition. No one here was just practicing anymore. Every session was an audition for the next rung up the ladder. And somewhere, above all this, loomed the shadow of Formula 2, faster, harsher, and even less forgiving. That was the next door he wanted to open. But in this sport, doors never stayed open for long. It was the kind of race where the stopwatch could decide a career. In the paddock, his parents stood shoulder to shoulder behind the chain-link fence, their jackets zipped against the wind, saying nothing. They didn't need to. Both knew the math. A finish outside the top 5 today, and the biggest sponsor would walk. When the lights went out, the car launched like a predator unleashed. The corners came at him with punishing force, each high-speed bend snapping his neck sideways, each braking zone hammering his forearms until they trembled. By lap 20, the heat inside the cockpit was suffocating, sweat pooling under his fireproofs. Every muscle screamed, but his hands kept feeding the steering wheel with mechanical precision. The garage was its own battlefield. Arguments with the lead engineer had been fierce earlier in the weekend, over tire compound, over setup, over risk. And yet, it was a single adjustment from that same engineer, made in the quiet minutes before the race, that turned the car from a stubborn mule into a weapon. They crossed the line fourth. It wasn't the podium they'd imagined, but it was survival. The sponsor stayed. In F2, that was a win. Around him, the paddock began packing up, mechanics stripping down the cars, teams already thinking about the next circuit. But he lingered in the garage, helmet still in hand, staring at the car like it was both savior and executioner. Ahead lay the door to Formula One. Whether it opened or slammed shut, that would be decided soon. It should have been the crowning moment. Monaco, 3 laps to go, his car leading the field. The harbor glittered under the sun, engines echoing off the walls. And then the voice came through his radio. Calm, clinical, final. Hold position, let your teammate through. From the grandstands, it was just another strategic call. In the cockpit, it was a punch to the ribs. He obeyed, crossed the line in second, raised the trophy, and smiled for the cameras. Every photo that day captured the grin. None captured the hollow inside it. Away from the circuit, Formula One devoured his schedule. Photo shoots in sterile studios, sponsor meet and greets in glittering hotels, endless interviews where every answer had to be both safe and sellable. There were weeks when he spent more time under stage lights than under a helmet. Driving an F1 car was both thrill and torment. The downforce pinned it to the tarmac like an iron hand, letting it knife through corners at speeds that felt impossible until it decided not to cooperate. 1 degree off in tire temperature, and the machine turned traitor. Every lap was a negotiation with a diva that could make or ruin a weekend. Then came Silverstone, the race no one expected him to finish. A gearbox fault in lap 10 had crippled the car. Yet he stayed out, defending against faster, fresher rivals, blocking every gap they found. When he crossed the line 5th, the garage erupted, not for victory but for defiance. Moments like that were rare now. The deeper he went into Formula One, the clearer it became. Here, speed was only half the battle. The other half lived in the shadows: politics, orders, image. And in that half, even the fastest driver could lose. Beyond the paddock, younger talent was already waiting, their helmets gleaming, simulator reflexes razor sharp. They would be on the grid soon. And when they arrived, the fight would change again. It happened in a single corner, one he used to own. For years, rivals had learned not to challenge him there. The line was his, always. But on that lap, under a bright sky and with the crowd roaring, a rookie slipped past him on the outside. Clean, effortless. From the commentary booth, it was just another overtake. To him, it was a siren in the night. The signs had been building for months. The team no longer rushed new upgrades to his garage. Technical briefings happened without his name on the invite list. He was still reliable, still solid, but no longer the driver they built around. The next generation had arrived with different weapons. While he'd learned his craft on cold mornings and real asphalt, they'd grown up in front of simulator screens, logging thousands of hours before even sitting in a race car. Their data work was flawless, their reflexes almost digital. Twitch fast, unflinching in risks he now calculated twice before taking. Behind the scenes, the real race was for his seat. Closed-door meetings between team principals and sponsors. Quiet murmurs in the paddock about replacements. Every session became a trial, every lap a defense plea. And yet, in the cockpit, his hands still moved with precision, his instincts still sharp enough to dance with the car. But around him, the tide was shifting. The sport was already looking past him, scanning the horizon for the next story to tell. The question wasn't if someone would take his place, it was when. And in Formula One, when could arrive faster than the checkered flag. It was just a city park on a quiet afternoon. Not a racetrack, not a podium. Just a stretch of worn grass and cracked asphalt where a group of kids chased remote control cars. Their laughter cut through the hum of the little electric motors, rising every time one of the cars made a daring jump over a patch of dirt. From a bench nearby, he watched them, still in his team jacket. To anyone else, he was just another passerby taking a break. But in his mind, the scene pulled him back decades, to a boy on the living room floor, sketching circuits on paper, making engine noises with his mouth, believing speed was the only thing that mattered. Somewhere along the way, that boy had grown into a professional who measured life in tenths of a second, and had traded purity for survival. Thoughts of life after the helmet had begun to creep in. Maybe he would build an academy for young drivers, teaching them the truths he'd learned the hard way. Maybe he'd try the broadcast booth, finding new ways to tell the stories of those still in the fight. Or maybe he would walk away entirely, searching for a rhythm that didn't smell of fuel or echo with engines. What he still had was unmistakable. The flicker in his eyes at the sound of a revving engine, the heartbeat quickening through a perfect corner. What was gone was just as clear. The weightless joy, the innocence, the belief that the fastest driver always won. Then, his phone buzzed. An old name from the paddock appeared on the screen. The voice on the other end carried an unexpected offer, a seat in an experimental racing project, no points, no politics, just speed. He didn't answer right away. But as a faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, the kid's laughter in the distance mixed with the phantom roar of an engine in his head. And for the first time in a long while, he wasn't thinking about endings.